It's early fall here in Connecticut, and that means it's time to start picking apples. And I'm not just talking about picking regular apples. Really, our primary focus right now is to get the donation apples picked. All the apples that we're going to be donating to the local food banks and soup kitchens and food pantries and things like that. We had a really good crop this year. It came through really well. My goal, I was really hoping that we could break 10,000 pounds. And I have a feeling we're going to not only meet that, but I think we're going to exceed it as well. So when the harvest season first began, I was having a really hard time finding volunteers. And a lot of the typical groups that I was hoping to reach out to and kind of lean on to help with picking these apples, they were just busy or had other things going on. And it had actually gotten to the point where a lot of our earlier varieties, specifically like Macintosh, were actually dropping. They were dropping out of the trees pretty heavily. So I reached out to the one volunteer group that I knew I could rely on, and that was my wife and kids. And I thank them for their diligence and their enthusiasm and their willingness to come out and help. And we went out several times, and we managed to pick about 5,000 pounds of apples just as a family that we could get loaded up into boxes and shipped out. And in the meantime, while we were doing that, I managed to find a couple of other organizations that were a great help in order to get these apples picked. And then the floodgates opened up. We had a group called Food Rescue US, and they were awesome. They came up several times, and they just loaded up the backs of their cars and minivans and hatchbacks with loads and loads of apples, and they delivered them off to a bunch of local food pantries and such to get them out to folks that needed them. And I reached out to an old friend of mine who's a pastor of a church, and he just jumped right on, and they called it a field trip. They came up and man, they picked like 3,600 pounds worth of apples in like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. It was just remarkable. And then I reached out to our local homeschooling group, and they loved it. And before I knew it, I had another 50 volunteers up there, families and kids, and we ended up throwing hot dogs on the grill, and we had some food, and it just turned out to be a wonderful time. And lo and behold, everything came together, and we managed to just pick tons of apples and get them out, loaded up and out to the food bank. And as fast as we were picking them, we were trying to get them shipped out to local food banks and food pantries and soup kitchens, etc. And ultimately the bulk of them went right to the main Connecticut food bank hub down in Wallingford. They just kept sending up trucks, and we kept loading them up with apples as fast as we could. And by the grace of God, this all managed to come together perfectly. And when it was all said and done, we ended up harvesting, packaging, and distributing about 16,000 pounds worth of apples. 8 tons of apples got shipped out of this place. And I just want to say thanks. I want to say thanks to all the people that were involved, all the people that helped. I want to thank my family for all that they did in trying to get this to come together and to help pulling this off. I want to thank Food Rescue US. You guys were awesome. You were consistent. You came down several times and helped. Milford Christian Church, Pastor Loomer. You guys were machines. I mean, you did an amazing job of coming down and just picking tons of apples. And my fellow homeschoolers, what an awesome day we had. That really was just a wonderful time, and we picked over 3,000 pounds of apples that day in just a couple of hours. So that worked out really great. Elizabeth, you know who you are. She actually pulled the seats out of her minivan and drove an hour and a half each way twice so that she could load up her van with apples and bring them back to her local church and get those distributed out to folks that needed them out there as well. So it just really worked out great. Everything came together. 16,000 pounds of apples. That's a lot of apples. And I just want to thank everyone that was involved. Thank everyone that helped. And I thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you'll continue to follow us along on this journey.